So recently, I was reading about this team working in the Amazon who thought they were just doing a routine survey for deforestation, and instead they ended up staring at a laptop that was quietly telling them, hey, there is an entire city under these trees. They had this LiDAR rig, basically a laser scanner, that fires pulses down through the canopy and measures how long it takes for the light to bounce back from the ground. You fly it back and forth, the computer collects millions of points, and when you strip away the leaves digitally, you get a bare map of the land under the forest. Most days that shows you hills, riverbanks, some old landslides, the usual stuff. On one of those runs, the scan came back weird. The woman leading the project is watching the ground model load in strips. Forest, 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 and then this one patch where the surface stops behaving like nature. Instead of messy lumps and twisting curves, she starts seeing straight segments, long, suspiciously clean lines, angles that meet like someone used a ruler. They clear the display, rerun the filter to remove every return that came from leaves and branches, and let the ground points render again at high resolution. Where the map had been a fuzzy green blur before, it sharpens into something that makes everyone in the little field office sit up. There is a broad, flat rectangle right in the center. Off that rectangle, two wide linear features run east to west, almost perfectly straight for kilometer after kilometer. Crossing them at regular intervals are narrower lines, like teeth in a comb. At the intersections are raised platforms, all with the same basic dimensions, all aligned the same way. It is a grid. It is not even pretending to be natural. They start spinning the model around, changing the shading, checking different passes from different days. The pattern does not disappear. When they overlay it with older satellite images, the surface just looks like unbroken rainforest. No patches of clear-cut, no ranches, no modern roads. Whatever made that grid is buried under a full, healthy canopy. Somebody in the room finally says what everyone is thinking. That is a city plan. The old story most of us grew up with is that the Amazon was basically endless jungle with a few small villages scratched into the riverbanks. No big urban centers, nothing like the classic cities you hear about in other parts of the world. The LiDAR is sitting there on the screen saying, that story is wrong. They do what scientists always do when something looks too good. They try to prove it is a mistake. Maybe the software is glitching. Maybe the filters are creating fake geometry. They run different algorithms. They compare with control areas nearby that are definitely just forest. Only this one patch has those straight lines and rectangles. Whatever it is real. At some point, there is only one thing left to do. They have to go stand on it. Getting there is the opposite of the clean digital models. It is hot in a way that feels personal. They move by boat along a brown river where the banks are just walls of green. Then motorized canoes give way to narrow trails. Every step is mud, roots, or something that bites. Machetes come out. Sweat runs into eyes. Clothing never fully dries. The coordinates from the LiDAR are loaded into handheld receivers and checked every few minutes because trails out there are more suggestion than fact. Nobody sees anything dramatic when they arrive. The forest does what the forest always does. It pretends nothing is going on. The GPS beeps. The team leader looks around and says, according to the map, we are standing in the central plaza. Visually, it is just more trees. Tall trunks, hanging vines, the usual undergrowth. But once the idea of a plaza is in your head, the place feels off. The ground underfoot is unusually level. The trees are not growing randomly. They seem to cluster along slight edges. There is a subtle rise around the space, almost like a low, eroded platform. They start lining up tape along the axis shown in the LiDAR. Where one edge of the plaza should be, there is a break in the micro-relief of the forest floor, just a few tens of centimeters high. Roots cling to it. If you scrape away the leaf litter with your boot, the soil underneath is packed and hard, almost like a floor that has been trampled for centuries and then buried. To prove anything, they need more than a shape. They need time. So they pick a spot on the edge of a raised platform, away from big trees so they do not kill them, and cut a small, neat excavation trench. The top layer is what you expect: loose leaves, little roots, bits of recent charcoal from natural fires or campfires. Under that, the color changes. The soil goes darker, richer. It is full of tiny flecks of charcoal and fragments of pottery and bone. When they bring a handful up to their noses, it has that sweet, earthy smell you get from soil that has had organic material added to it for a long time. This is not random forest dirt. This is anthropogenic earth. Soil made and improved by people who lived and cooked and dumped ash in the same place for generations. Deeper down, there is a pale band, a sterile layer laid down by some flood event that washed over everything and dropped a sheet of clean sediment. Under that, the dark layer returns with more concentrated evidence, the outline of a post hole, the edge of a hearth, bigger bits of broken ceramics. The team bags charcoal from the bottoms of those features, writes careful labels, and sends them off to labs that can measure how long ago that wood was burned. While they wait for dates, they keep opening windows into the grid. Along one of the main avenues picked up by LiDAR, they find a long, low ridge. When they walk along the top of it, the ridge runs straight until the undergrowth hides the view. On either side are shallow channels. When they scrape at those channels, the soil is dark and crumbly and full of old organic material. In some places, the pattern repeats in rows, raised strip, channel, raised strip, channel. That kind of pattern is classic for raised field agriculture. If you live in a floodplain and you are planting for more than one season, you do not simply plant seeds in flat ground and hope. You build beds. You pile earth into long bars so your crops sit a little higher. Water fills the channels between beds during heavy rain and drains slowly during dry periods. Fish can swim up those wet corridors. You can trap them and eat them. You can add ash and compost to the beds and create a soil that holds nutrients for a long time. The idea that this city had carefully engineered fields woven into its street grid is wild. It means the planners were not just thinking about where to put houses, they were designing food systems. Follow one of the LiDAR anomalies away from the main cluster, and you find a depression with raised edges. It looks at first like just another wet, low spot. When they clear the vegetation from the rim, they see there are cut channels leading into it and out of it, all with compacted bottoms. The embankments on the sides are not natural slopes, they are built. On one wall, there are faint traces of post holes going up in a line, like there used to be a wooden structure there. What you are looking at is a reservoir. Water came in from upland, pooled there, and then was released downstream. The post holes could have held a simple gate or a platform where people controlled the flow. At the bottom, again, there are layers of dark sediment with charcoal. Whatever this place was, it needed a lot of water and could not leave that to chance. One of the strangest details comes from the way the whole thing is oriented. The main avenue of the city, running through that central open space, is not just lined up with convenience. When they check its azimuth against the path of the sun, it tracks very closely to where sunrise falls on key dates in the year. Another axis lines up roughly with the direction that would have mattered for planting, when the first good rains tend to arrive. This is not some perfect observatory carved in stone, but the numbers are too precise and the pattern too consistent for coincidence. Whoever laid out those roads had an eye on the sky. Their calendar was written partly in dirt. As more trenches go in along different parts of the grid, the picture of daily life comes into focus. Small platforms near the big plaza have evidence of repeated burning and rebuilding, like places that hosted ovens or kilns. Further out, there are house mounds with post holes and rings, charcoal from domestic fires, bones from fish and small animals, heaps of broken cooking pots dumped into pits when they finally cracked beyond repair. This is where the numbers from the lab come back and everyone takes a deep breath. The most recent charcoal from the upper layers close to the surface is only a few centuries old. That makes sense. People were living in and around this grid into the late period, tending some of the same fields, using some of the same paths, right up until waves of disease and violence tore the population apart after outsiders arrived in the wider region. The deeper samples are where the shock lives. That charcoal from the bottom of the post holes anchoring major platforms and from the earliest occupation levels near the central plaza clusters around ages close to 2,000 years. Not exact, not a single magic date, but a range that says by the time a lot of the famous empires in other parts of the world were doing their thing, people here had already staked out this plan and started living in it. Put bluntly, that city sat under the jungle, close to invisible, while the narrative outside said this forest was always more or less empty. As soon as you train your eye to look for those faint rectilinear shadows and the subtle signatures of raised fields, they start popping up all over the basin. Some are smaller, some are bigger, some are connected by what look like causeways, long, straight embankments that could only have been roads. Instead of one freak city, you are looking at an entire region that used to be dotted with urban centers, each with its own satellites and field systems, woven together by ground and water routes. It changes how you see the modern forest. Those patches of unusually rich soil people called dark earth were always known locally as good places to plant. The distribution of certain fruit and nut trees has puzzled botanists for a long time. They grow in clusters that do not always line up with what the climate or animals alone would produce. When you lay the old city grids and causeways over those patterns, things line up. What looks like wild forest is often regrowth over an old human-managed landscape. That does not mean the jungle is fake or somehow less important. If anything, it is more impressive. You are looking at a long-term collaboration between people and a rainforest, where human hands shaped soil and water and plant distribution, and then the canopy came back and covered the scaffolding, not erasing it, but folding it in. There is a very human danger that comes with this kind of revelation. Once outsiders hear ancient city, they think treasure, hidden vaults, artifacts they can dig up and sell. Politicians with no respect for indigenous rights also jump on it in a different way. They see old earthworks and say, look, the forest was already modified. Why not bulldoze some more and put cattle here? We would just be the next phase. The people doing the work on the ground are very aware of that. They do not publish precise locations. They work with the communities who live on those rivers today, many of whom are descendants of the people who built and maintained those cities, even if there has been a cultural break. They push for tighter protection, not tour buses. If you strip away the hype, what you are left with is this quiet, humbling fact. The Amazon, that shows up on satellite maps as a big anonymous green patch, is carrying a memory. Underneath those trees are city plans carved into dirt, irrigation systems that still hold water, reservoirs that still catch rain, fields that still grow better crops. These things did not vanish. They just dropped out of our story. The LiDAR is not magic. It did not summon a city. It just finally listened to the ground in a way our eyes could not. The lasers went down through the canopy, bounced off the earth, and came back telling us. Someone made something here, kept it going for a very long time, and then disappeared from your records. So when you hear that line, they discovered a city hidden under the jungle for 2,000 years. Try to see past the Indiana Jones version. Think about the people who first laid out those roads, arguing over where the central plaza should go, digging the first reservoir, planting the first raised beds. Think about the kids who grew up there centuries later, running the same paths, playing on the same platforms, thinking that grid was just the way the world was. The forest closed over their rooftops, the air roots wrapped around their walls, their canals silted in. But the bones of their work stayed put, waiting for a box of lasers, a tired field crew, and a generation of scientists finally willing to admit that the old story of empty, untouched rainforest needs to go in the bin. The city was not lost. We were just not paying attention.